Hey everybody, welcome to Olympic Minds Leadership Beyond Limits. I'm your host, Sherry Winn, and this is a podcast for people who want to be the leader of leaders, the visionary of visionaries, for people who want to go beyond success into significance, and for people who are really interested in going beyond mediocrity into mastery. What we're going to talk about is not theory, and the reason it's not theory is because I talk to people who have lived it. These are people who understand, like it's been grit tested, heart proven, and results driven. So these are individuals like Kim today. You're going to learn a ton from. I can't wait to introduce you to Kim. And so I'm Sherry Winn, two-time Olympian, national championship basketball coach, author, speaker, and CEO of the Winning Leadership Company. So let me tell you a little bit about Kim. We met several years ago, and one of the loveliest things I can tell you is that she's authentic, she's real, she's funny, she's an author, she's an executive coach, she is a fractional CRO and COO, and she's written books. I mean, she's got it all together, and she's lovely, lovely, lovely. And so, Kim, why don't you tell everybody else a little bit more about yourself?
Oh, bless you, Sharon, my friend. I mean, how do I follow that? You're always so kind to me. And now you've set me up to be funny, so no pressure there.
But you are funny, so there's no pressure because that's just normal, speak for you, London speak for you, or whatever it is.
Comedic value. Who am I? So I guess my life has been many versions of life. So I started off as a hairdresser, then I moved into financial services, then I moved into IT software, and then I got to board level, still only with my NVQ in hairdressing. A bit awkward. Because nobody cares about that. I cared. Nobody else cared. And then I had my little girl late in life, so she's 8, and realised that I needed to make another change. So when I was in hospital in intensive care, I realised something needed to adjust. And so I quit my job, as you do, and I came out and I set up on my own as a consultant and decided rather than running big companies, I'd help other people to run theirs. And that was 8 years ago, and I've been really blessed to have written a number of books. I've got a TV show, I've got a podcast, I get to meet awesome people like you. I mean, what a joyous life to live, to get to hear people's stories and to share them. And so I'm super grateful to be on the other side today, sharing mine, which is like, I'm not really sure quite where to go. Apart from comedy value would be my nickname in corporate life was the Smiling Assassin. Because
let's talk about that, because I want to stop you right there, because I think it's such a great story about being a smiling assassin. And so let people know, like, what does that mean and how do you come to have that nickname? Because it's really not as bad as it sounds like. I mean, it's really a wonderful nickname. It's really something that I think every leader should aspire to have, not maybe the nickname, but maybe the characteristics that go with the nickname.
Yeah, I think that's true. And I guess a large part of it was the fact that we as leaders, we sometimes shy away from the difficult conversations, or we go into those difficult conversations and we know they're not going to go well. And therefore we change our tone, we change our pitch, and we change our outcome because we are on a defensive. Whereas I've tried to always spend mine going, that people have got to be ready to listen. So you've got to do the extra work to check they're ready to listen. And kind of my big breakthrough moment in this, I was doing a disciplinary hearing probably about 25 years ago. And this girl was, she didn't really understand what I was saying to her. She said, I'll just sign it. And I said, well, no, you can't, because you don't understand what it is I need you to do differently. And therefore, in 4 weeks, we're going to be back in here. And in 8 weeks, you're going to have no job. And that doesn't feel fair. And so I tried everything. And then I realised we were having two very different conversations, because I was talking to her about the impact she was having, and she was defending the intention that she had. So we weren't communicating. And so I stopped the meeting and I said to her, let me just rewind. Let's start again. Can I start by sharing with you what I think your intention is? And she was like, oh, okay. I said, well, I think you're intending to be a really great team player. I think you're really trying to achieve the goal that we've set you. I think you're really passionate about the organisation and the outcome, and you want to put the customer first. She went, exactly. So brilliant. That's exactly what I would like you to do. Am I okay to share with you some ways where you get in your own way? So I've now gone from attacker to ally. So she was ready to listen. So we were able to do that. And I guess that's where the Smiling Assassin came from, was in not being afraid to tackle the difficult conversations, but doing so in a way that showed kindness, courage. Right. Because it takes more courage to be kind. It's much easier to just throw yourself in there and go, this is going to be uncomfortable, it's going to be a bit awkward, so I'm going to protect myself, and I'm going to just lead everybody by the end of my finger, and wonder why that doesn't work.
Right. I love the what you just said about going from attacker to ally, right? Because a lot of people think the difficult conversations, and I like to call them winning conversations, because I think if you go in with the idea it's going to be a winning conversation versus difficult or an obstacle, or even sometimes they say crucial or hard or whatever, then we're already looking for a positive outcome. But when you say from attacker to ally, if you can go in, or when you go in, right, with the idea that, look, I'm really on your side, like I'm truly on your side. And what I want you to do is be successful. And this is the thing that I think every leader understands. When your team members are successful, you're successful. Like you can't separate their success from you.
No, that you're so true. And I think we want our people, we want our team to be set up for success, because we are more successful if they're successful. And yet we don't always take the very subtle steps that we could take. So, for example, for me, one of my biggest beliefs is that one of the greatest gifts we have is our belief, our ability to believe in other people, and we can lend that to them. And as a leader, if we ask somebody to do something, we do that because we think they're going to be successful. Because if not only do they look stupid, we look stupid. So we're not going to put them into that role unless we really think that we believe that they're going to be successful. And yet we know statistically that 70% of us fear our inner imposter at some point in our life. So likelihood is your team you're leading today, somebody in there is facing their inner imposter in every day that you lead them. So imagine if the next time you ask them to do something, instead of going, Sherry, could you do me a favour? Could you take that meeting? Because I'd really appreciate that. I went, Sherry, could you take that meeting for me? And the reason I'm asking you to is I believe you are the best person for it. And I believe that because the skills I see you demonstrate every day around empathy, around engagement, around presence is really going to be what sets you up for success in that meeting. And that's why I believe you're going to be the most successful. If you're having a day of doubt, you get to borrow my belief in you. So we are setting you up for success, but it takes a bit of extra time. It means I take an extra 30 seconds to tell you why I believe you're going to be successful. Instead of being fearful that if I say that to you and you fail, then I'll look really silly because I said I believed you. Well, everyone already knew I believed in you. If not, I wouldn't have given you the work in the first place.
Well, it's the six. It is. I think that, when I was a basketball coach, I used to have players come into my office and they would say, Coach, you have to have confidence in me. And I go, I do. Like I do, because I wouldn't have put money into, a scholarship for you. Like I absolutely do. It's 100% I do. But what we forget is that they at a level, they don't know that. So there's a level of most people, and I would say everybody at some point has self-doubt, right? I mean, that's just the way of being human. You get a little self-doubt. Some people have more, some people have less, but very few humans really spend the time to elevate themselves to the level of just knowledge that you're a winner, that you're a miracle, that you're beautiful, that you're wonderful. Like we have an internal dialogue that goes on that says something like, well, I'm not pretty enough. I'm not, smart enough. I'm not good enough. Nobody's ever going to read a book that I write. Nobody's going to listen to a talk that I do. No, we have this kind of ongoing conversation that most people don't even know they're having the conversation. And I know in your life, Kim, that there was a moment that you came face to face with this very thing I'm talking about when you were having some negative self-talk that you had to correct. Would you mind sharing that story a little bit?
Of course not. So I'd had negative self-talk for years, Sherry. Horrendous. In fact, it didn't matter what award I got given, what accolade. I used to look at them and go, yeah, if only you knew. I would immediately bat it back. If only you knew what I knew, then none of this would happen. And then I remember my first breakthrough came when I suddenly was telling myself this, and the guy who was talking to me and sharing with me what he thought about me as a leader was the guy I aspired to be like. He was one of the best leaders I've ever worked for. And I caught myself in this moment where I'm going, well, if you knew what I knew, convincing myself that even though he'd given me Leader of the Year, he'd got a point to prove to somebody else. I mean, the dialogue was dreadful. And I caught myself in that moment and I went, hold on a sec. Are you saying that your opinion that you are rubbish is more valid and more likely than Paul's opinion that you're really good. That made sense to me, because I was like, well, no, I don't think my opinion, I don't rate my opinion at all, to be fair, Sherry. I certainly wasn't going to rate it above him. So I was like, oh. And I decided in that moment that what I was going to do is borrow his belief and then do whatever I could to not let him down. Swap the dialogue slightly.
Right.
Then my second underlying moment came when I'd had Scarlett and she was 9 months old, and I found a lump, and I went to write her the letter. You know, how do you share all the love, guidance, support, wisdom, thoughts if you're not going to be here to share them? And I didn't really know where to start that letter. And I just stared looking at this blank sheet of paper for ages and decided, I know, I'll go and look at her. That will help. Didn't help. It did not help. And I remember walking in and looking at her, and it hit me in that moment that our children don't learn by what we say and what we do. They learn by how we are and who we are. And so I realised that if I didn't go and do the inner work, if I didn't go and understand why was I saying this about myself and what could I do to change it, my legacy would that voice would become the voice in her head. That broke my heart. Because I absolutely was not leaving that as my legacy. And that started me on a 7-year journey of understanding, why do I say that? What evidence is there that the opposite is true? And I use a 3-step framing now, because the one thing that I've learned is you can't trick your brain to not think it. In that moment, no matter how much work you do, there'll be a moment where that inner voice goes, well, there's a chink in the armour. Here I come. I'm in. And it'll be back in there with the I'm not enough, who's going to listen to what you've got to say, who's going to read a book you've written, why is anyone going to put all those things that we tell ourselves. And so what I now do is I say to myself, okay, so I can get it wrong. And the example I'll share is every time I do public speaking, my little voice reminds me that 24 years ago I stood up and told a room full of a few hundred people that one of the charities we were going to support was Imperial Leather, which is a soap. And I actually meant Imperial Cancer, and it was horrendous. But everybody thought it was part of the speech, and it carried on. And so my little brain will remind me of that and go, even though you've never said anything that stupid again, you could say something that stupid. And so the second thing that I'll do is I'll say, okay, so I can get it wrong. I can royally get it wrong. Are there any occasions where I've got it right? The reason why that question is important is because the subconscious brain is the happiest little help you'll ever have, but it's got one significant flaw. Does not understand the difference between help and harm. So whatever you're telling it, it thinks you want. So if you say, has there ever been an occasion I get this right? It will run back into the library of your brain, and it will find all the times where people stayed behind to talk to you about something that had impacted them when you were speaking, or got in touch with you after reading your book to tell you what it had done for them and how they'd overlooked it. So then I can go, okay, so I can get it wrong, but I can get it right. For me, I use Scarlett, who is my North Star, but for anybody else, pick someone who means the world to you and go, okay, if this were Scarlett, what advice would I give them? Because my advice to her is always, do your best, be kind, and what's the worst that can happen? So if that's the advice I give her, it has to be the advice I take. And that's what got me into things like the TEDx and that, because I was like, well, nobody's going to be interested. And I was like, what would you say to Scarlett? And I'm like, well, I'd say to Scarlett, you've got to give it a try. You've got to get out there and give it your best shot. So it's like, you can't say it if you're not going to do it.
Right.
Because I'm a walking legacy to her of how to show up and be in the world.
Yeah. That's one of the greatest reasons I think that we can change is because we know that somebody, even if it's not your child, even if you don't have a child, that people are watching you, right? Constantly, whether you know it or not. You have, I just got back from one of my former players was inducted into the Hall of Fame, which is a pretty big deal because not very many people get inducted in the Hall of Fame, right? And I have to remember, like I had 4 players show up and I'm looking at them thinking, what were the things I told them? Like, what did I say to these people? But I know that my intention was always, always, always. And so if I can remember, my intention was always good. It was always positive. Even when I showed up and I was a little bit, some of my methods were a little bit questionable, even when I can remember that. I always knew that my intention was really to get the best from them, right? And so if I can stay on the intention part and recognize, look, the rest of it is we're gonna mess up. It's the human experience. Daily, right? I'm going to make a mistake. I might trip over something. I might burn something on the stove. I might spill a coffee on myself. I might step on my dog's foot, dog's tail, whatever. I mean, there's going to be something that we do that's not in alignment with perfection. And the faster, this is one of the things I learned, the faster that we can forgive ourselves, the faster that we can stand in grace, right? The faster we can move forward. So how did you teach yourself grace? How did you learn to stand in grace so that you can move on?
What a great question. I think for me, I've always believed that most people's intentions are honourable. So if that, and that's because my intention is always honourable, even if my impact is off, my intention is always honourable. And so I look and I've for many years had to externalize it because I was still building that relationship with myself. But I go, if this was somebody in my team, what would I say to them? Well, I'd know their intention was honourable. So I'd say, it's okay, we're learning. We are perfectly imperfect. And it's never the mistake that defines us, it's what we do with it. Right. So what are we learning? What's the lesson? How do we move forward to make sure we don't make this mistake again? Make a different mistake. Right. And so I guess for me, the other thing that had been my mantra for years, and I say this to my little girl all the time, is that we cannot choose how somebody behaves towards us. We have no choice in that, but we do get to choose how we respond, and our response speaks volumes about us. So we have to own that. And I guess for me, one of the other things, which is probably a dreadful personality trait, is if I make the wrong choice, if I respond in a way that I'm not proud of, when I realise that, I have to apologise because you have to take accountability, and that hurts a lot more than taking a moment to make a better choice of the response. So I will sometimes go, do you know what, right now I'm really struggling to find a response I'm going to be proud of, so I'm just going to remove myself for 10 minutes while I deal with what's going on for me, and then I'll come back and I can be fully present. And it took me a long time to learn to give myself the grace to be graceful.
Right. It is a hard thing, I think, because we're taught at an early age, right? The way to get what you want is to punish yourself, right? And part of punishment is the guilt and the shame. And those are very, very low vibrations. When we're living in guilt and shame, we're living at the lowest vibration you could possibly live at, right? And so everything that you want and desire is not there. It's not in guilt, it's not in shame, it's over here. And so learning that we have to let that go. And sometimes it's really challenging because we've learned that, to get what we want, we need to punish ourselves as long as possible, and then we'll get what we want, which is actually the opposite of what occurs, right?
It's so true. I mean, we've been told so many mistruths. So I've got a book at the moment that's with the publisher, and we're just going through the publication, and it's about the power of curiosity. And it's because for years we've been brought up with the saying, "Curiosity killed the cat." And it wasn't until recently that I learned that that's only half the saying. So the saying is, curiosity killed the cat and satisfaction brought it back. So it's curiosity killed it, but the satisfaction on what it learned by stepping outside of the comfort zone brought it back to life. Totally changes the whole make of what that was trying to tell us. And so it got me into that space going, what else are we telling ourselves that isn't true? What else are we telling ourselves that pulls us into conformity? We've got to fit in and layer in the world we live in now, the despair and compare society that we've created. We conform even more. We look at the seemingly perfect airbrush lives that people share with us, and then we look at the messy reality of our own life and find ourselves lacking, but they're not true. Into every life a little rain may fall. So for all the things that go well, things have to go badly as well, badly equally. And so once we realise that actually that's okay, and that we no longer need to beat ourselves or wear the hair shirt for the rest of our lives because we got it wrong, or it didn't go as well as planned, or somebody else did it better than us, it's not the lesson you were there to learn.
No, but that's part of our self-awareness, right? That's the part of understanding what we're doing to ourselves and really tapping into that and recognizing it. So, we've talked about this. I've had health problems for a long time, and so I'm like, how come I'm not getting better? I've done everything, I'm mad. And then I started listening to my internal language. And so I get up in the morning, I'm like, oh man, I don't feel good. Oh, God, is this pain ever going to go away? I can't believe. I was like, oh, wow, wait a second. Like, that's not a good thing to be telling my body, right?
Yeah.
So I've been working on getting up in the morning going, despise a miracle. I mean, think of all the times that it ran for me. Think of all the push-ups I did. Think of all the times that it's overcome all the different things that people said I could not overcome without surgery, without drugs, and it's done it. And I started saying, I don't think about pumping my blood. I don't think about, how my nerves, connect and how they work together. I don't think it's all doing it. And so I realized that all the stories I've been telling me, and I didn't know I was doing this. I mean, come on, like I've been doing it for 20 something years and I did not know I was doing it. And the interesting thing is, as I started saying to my body, like, I really love you, I appreciate you, thank you so much, this is amazing, you're a miracle. Then little small, like, miracles started showing up. Little things I could do a little bit more than I had done before. And what is it? Is the result of listening to what you're telling yourself and changing the story. I mean, changing that story, because you can't keep repeating the story and then want a different ending. It just does not work.
Yes, I love that. It's so true, because that dialogue that we're running in our brains, we run all of the time. And when we're developing the script, as it were, I liken it to software in your phone. So we create the script at the age of 7, and we enforce it at the age of 14, and we embed it at the age of 21. And if you don't go back and do the work, you are running on that operating system. Now, I'm 52, so I would have been running on 31-year out-of-date software update. And, I say to anybody, you look at your phone, the minute it comes up and says software update available, we're all straight on it. Oh, yeah, I must do that, I must do that. And yet, with ourselves, we weren't doing that. I would have run on this out-of-date software that is the script you don't realise that you're saying. And the first step to doing the work is to get present to what you're saying to yourself. To go, wow. There was a real damning moment for me when I realised I've said things to myself that I would never dream of saying to another human being, even one I didn't like. And yet I was willing to say them to myself ferociously all of the time. And you think, how are you going to live the life you want to live when actually you don't like yourself? Because for you to talk to yourself in that way, that's not coming from a place of love.
Right.
And that was a really hard journey back for me to recognize that actually I didn't like myself.
So we're talking about all this, right? And how does it fit back into leadership? Because we're talking about this stuff and everybody was going, well, that's really interesting. That's really nice that you do it. And blah, blah, blah. But, for me, this is the change maker. This is where those leaders go from the leader to the leader of leaders, right? This is where that top 3% of all leaders live in this space. So what is it about this that's so important for leaders to, to jump onto together, to say, this is something I need a coach for. This is something I need to explore. This is somewhere I need to go. Why is that so essential in leadership?
For me, you can't be a good leader until you're a good leader of you. Because wherever you go. You can't outrun yourself. I've tried. I keep turning up. So you've got to be able to lead that first, because that's the leadership lesson people are seeing. They see how you lead you first, right, and then they see how you lead them second. Right. If you're disconnected, they're disconnected, because they're like, well, something's not quite right here. And actually, when once we get really present to that element, I think one of my toughest challenges was running a big redundancy program. And I remember the day before, sitting with the board, and they said, Kim, are we ready? And I was like, well, ready as we'll ever be. And they paled slightly, and they were like, should we hold off? And I was like, well, no, what I mean is, I've prepared for everything I can possibly prepare for. What I can't prepare for is when I tell those 1,800 people tomorrow, I don't know what this piece of information, when added to whatever burden they're already carrying, is going to do. So all I can do is hold the space for them. And be comfortable enough to hold the space for them. So not make it about me, not make it about the fact they might yell at me, or they might swear at me, or they might get very angry, all of which have happened. Because that's not about me.
Right.
At the moment, it's about them. So I have to be a good enough leader of self that I can suspend my needs to lead my people, particularly in times of trouble. And so for me, the leaders that I've seen that have really embraced this have gone on to have exponential results, because people trust that in those moments, they are so focused on leading the group, and they're not going to fall back into that selfish, what's my need? What is it that I need to make today easier, to make today comfortable? But actually, how do I set my people up for success? And that means having some of those more challenging conversations, but it also means being comfortable with the uncomfortable. The one thing that I've learned about leadership is there's a lot of uncomfortable. So you may as well get comfortable with it, because you can't outrun it. But you can work through it. And yet you see people desperately trying to avoid uncomfortable conversations, uncomfortable situations, uncomfortable challenges. You're like, if you want to avoid that, don't lead.
Right. No, it's not time to lead. It's the time to, it's you give it up. I mean, I think people, until they understand why they're chasing leadership, right? So they think it's a title, they think it's the money, they think it's the power, they think of whatever. Until they understand, those are such a small part. Like that's such a small part of it. When they really understand, it's about, look, I got to show up for these people every day. And what if I fail, I hurt everybody, every single person that's here, right? And that's the responsibility that you hold. And I think that you said something that, a while ago about, people are going to follow what you do, not what you say. They're really going to look at you, and you're going to give them things that you don't even know you're giving them. So when I went back to this Hall of Fame thing, and I was talking to the mother of one of my player that got inducted, right? And so she almost died. This player almost died a few years ago. And, her mom says, if she wouldn't have gone through your program, she would have never had the mental toughness to make it through. She goes, you taught her, how to be mentally tough. And I was like, well, she already was. And she's like, no. You taught her how to be so strong that when things came, she thought she could get through it. And taught her to have a voice, because they had got all these, she was losing weight, she was in pain, had gone to all these medical professionals, which typically happens to somebody who has some sort of chronic condition, right? Had gone to in the United States, the Mayo Clinic, and then finally the doctor said, well, we don't know what it is. And she goes, well, you have to find out. Like, she stuck up for herself. You have to find out. And he goes, well, we've done all the tests. He goes, what are you going to do? Cut you open? She goes, absolutely. That's the next step. You can't find it. That's what you got to do. And he got mad. The doctor got mad, threw his pen, walked out the door. And she goes, well, if he won't do it, somebody else will. But we've got to do this. And so when the doctor came in, he goes, all right, I scheduled you for surgery. She goes, well, good, we're going to find out. And to me, that moment of her being so tough and then sticking up for herself, right? Those were things I thought she had. And I do believe she still had a lot of that. But it's also things that she saw and that were taught through our program. And when you think about it, it's not just about that career. It's so much deeper. And I think true leaders understand that, look, what you're saying, what you're doing today is not about just, scaling the business, or we're going to get more productivity, or, hey, we're really looking for deeper engagement. It's not, it's about what that person from your culture or your teachings takes home and applies to the home life or applies to their personal life. That is the thing. That's the change maker. That's the power.
It's so true. One of the things I talk about quite a lot is giving ourselves permission to be human. Mm-hmm. And also, in doing so, giving our people permission to be human. Because only when we bring our whole selves to a situation can we really see the size of the potential. Mm-hmm. And you only get to do that if you first bring the parts of yourself that perhaps aren't your favorites and say, this is who I am. I've spent years telling everybody that I was the hairdresser on the board first, because it was my greatest fear that they'd find it. So I'll just lay it out there. You now can't use it against me, because I've already said. It's awkward. They're going to say, put the hairdresser on the board. But it's leading with the thing that you saw as your vulnerability, allowed other people to start to view their own vulnerability in that different place. And I think that's where that's where you start to see the real difference. I remember sitting next to a guy a few years ago who was on the phones and in the organisation that I worked for. And at the time I was COO. And I sat down next to him and he went, I can't talk to you. And I was like, why not, Livy? And he went, well, yeah, you're really important. And I said, I'm not really important. I've got a job to do. If I get it wrong, we've got a problem. You've got a job to do. You get it wrong, we've got a problem. Last time I checked, you cut me, I bleed. Pretty certain I cut you, you bleed. Don't tell HR I threatened to cut you. And you start laughing at it. You're really normal. I was like, well, we're human first. We didn't come out of the womb and go, I want to grow up to be somebody on the phones, because what we do is not who we are.
Right.
Fundamentally, we start with who is it we want to be? What are the values that we want to live by? What is the impact that we want to make? And then what is the role we can play that does that the most successfully? And those leaders that understand that pull it back to that values, that purpose, that drive, are the ones that go on to have the biggest impacts, to have the greatest growth, because they've become much more about what it is that they serve rather than how people view them. And for many years, particularly in corporate life, title has been a real challenge for people. They lead with title, whereas I've never once used my title, often to embarrassingly funny stories. Well, I remember bringing one and saying, I'm Kim, I work in sales. And this guy went, oh, you're going to do the minutes. I was like, can if you want me to. And then we carried on, and he got to this guy who'd been fawning over for the entire time we'd been there. And Craig said, I'm in sales and I work for Kim. And you saw him falter ever so slightly. It was like, oh, a bit awkward. But it was okay. We'd not got as far as Sean yet. And Sean was the quintessential English banker. I mean, short putting a bowler hat on his head. He was just what you'd expect if you thought back 25 years ago for English bankers. And he got to him and he was like, and I'm Sean and I also work for Kim. Well, by this point, this guy got no composure whatsoever. And he turned around and he went, why didn't you say something? And I said, oh, I'm sorry. Did you ask me to take the minutes because I'm a girl? And he went very quiet. And I went, I assumed that we take it in turns here and you'll do them next time. He was like, yeah, well, so yes, you will. We'll just move on. I said, but when you find the confidence to lead by the impact you have, instead of leading from title first,
right.
It changes the game.
Absolutely. Well, I think that, and this is, I've just been dying to ask this because it's like you said, you were where you started, right? You started as a beautician or hairdresser. You started as a hairdresser. All right. So from hairdresser, and I'm not saying anything like negative about hairdressers, but certainly it's a different world. It's a different thing that you do, right? How did you get from hairdresser to, like a COO? Like, how did you, like that seems a little bit impossible in my mind. It seems a little bit like far stretched in my mind.
So if I'm honest, I will always say this. I had my greatest leadership lesson in hairdressing. So as a hairdresser, I was taught to listen, to understand what the person is trying to achieve, to help them to achieve it, and to have them leave you feeling the very best version of themselves. And that's leadership. If you can understand what it is the person's trying to achieve, you help them to achieve it, and you have them leave you feeling a better version of themselves, then you're a leader. And again, the journey was a bit different. I ran my own business at 18. At 23, I lost the feeling in my hands and legs. And it took probably about 18 months and lots of tests and lots of other things for them to find out I'd become allergic to perm lotion. And so I could no longer be in the salon. And back then, perms were a big thing. So I got a 6-month temporary contract as a cashier at the bank while I worked out what on earth do you do when your dreams are shattered. And I sold the business to the girl who worked for me, and she still runs it to this day. And then I kind of fell into the world of financial services. And I spent the whole time going, and when they go, oh, could you do somebody to do this? I go, I'll give it a go. I'll give it a go. I had no idea how I was doing it. I remember the first ever mortgage application I did, which was before they did the regulation. It was somebody else was supposed to do it, and she panicked and she was like, I can't do it. And I said, well, I can see the customer, it's fine. I've got no issue talking to people. But I so didn't know what I was doing. I made these poor customers sign every single page of a 60-page document because I didn't know where they were supposed to sign. So I made them sign everywhere. I explained the living daylights out of that mortgage, so much so they told all their friends. And they were like, you need to see her because she's so kind. She'll explain it all. She doesn't put it into jargon. So I was so fully booked with other people that only wanted me to do their mortgage that I got promoted. And then before I knew it, I really was going for my first board role. And they used to put you on these future leader courses, and they put you on them. They saw something in you, and then they'd immediately pick up your CV like this and go, where's your degree? Yeah, I don't have one of those. Where are your A-levels? It's like, yeah, I don't have those either. I'm not being funny. You put me on the course. So I'm kind of assuming you saw something in me that maybe doesn't marry up on what's on paper. And if it helps, I can bring you in my MVQ in hairdressing. We can chat through it. And although I used to joke over the years that, you know, that they did put the hairdresser on the board, I ended up interviewing on my podcast a couple of years ago one of the guys who interviewed me, and he said every time you say that it makes me laugh. He said, because we did say that. He said, unanimously everybody knew you were the right person for the job. He said, but the minute we were actually putting it in writing to tell the powers that be that we wanted to offer you it, we were like, are we really putting the hairdresser on the board? Kind of had to have that step back moment that went, really are we going to be the ones that makes that career move? And I said, but it was about those elements of going, play to the strengths, you know, play to the fact that actually at our base every human being wants to be listened to, they want to be understood, and they want to be respected.
Right.
And we can do that for them. Doesn't mean to say we never disagree, but we never disrespect. And when you pull yourself into that space, you're the person that they want to take into meetings, because you're going to have the difficult conversation that they don't want to have, and you're going to make people enjoy it.
Yeah, you're going to make the people enjoy it. The silent assassin. You're going to make people enjoy it.
He used to say to me, he said, I don't know how you do it. He said, I'm there. I'm like, she's not going to give me bad news again, and she's not going to give me bad news again. He said, and then I come out, and I'm laughing away with you, and I walk along, and I'm like, she did it again. She gave me bad news. She told me something I didn't want to hear, or she said, or she got me to agree to something. That used to be one of my favourites. So again, people want to see you be human. So I used to encourage the leaders to be willing to make a bit more fun of themselves in the most appropriate way. So I remember launching this. It was a recognition scheme, and it was called STARS, so Special Thanks and Recognition. And over here at the time, we had a very old program called Stars in Their Eyes, where you'd turn up and you'd pretend to be an actual star, and you'd sing a song badly. So I was like, wouldn't it be great if all of the C-suite leaders got dressed up as stars from the past to be the launch of this thing? And we had this guy, Craig, lovely, lovely guy, sadly no longer with us, stoic Yorkshireman. And they were all there, dead smug, and they were like, well, if you get Craig to agree, then we'll all do it, thinking he's gonna like go, no way. I was like, all right then. So off I tootle, caught him on the stairs on the way back from the canteen, and by the time we got to his desk, not only had he agreed, we'd picked Abba and we'd got the rest of his group for him. And they were like, but we were relying on you. And he was like, yeah, but you sent her. I don't know how she does it. So I'm there saying to myself, and the answer is no, and the answer is no, and the answer is no. He said, and then I go, yes, of course, let's do that. He said, I'm like, but the answer was no. He said, but you make such good sense. And I said, but that's the thing. You want to meet people where they are, and then they will do the rest of the work for you. You know, gone into businesses for years doing transformational change. I used to joke before I found my self-confidence. I used to say that I made my career on asking the dumb girl questions. And actually, I now realise I made my career asking the curious questions. Yeah. The number one question I suggest any leader asks is go and ask your people at the front line, what is this daftest thing, the stupidest, dumbest thing we make you do every day? Mm-hmm. Because I guarantee they think you know what it is.
Yeah, no.
I also guarantee you don't. And when they tell you that, you are going to fix things, and you are going to create a culture where they bring to you all the other ways where you get in your own way.
Well, and I think that we spend too much time, you know, a lot of people have too much time defending something that you're doing rather than changing it so it works better. And I think that comes back down to that self-awareness, that, you know, that lifelong growth mentality. I call it the Olympic level mindset. You can call it the hairdresser mindset. we can do whatever we want to. But it's really about, you know, I think you can't get there. I think people are too busy defending when they haven't got that confidence behind them. And so once you have the confidence behind yourself, you don't have to defend anything anymore. It's such a relief that you no longer have to defend. You could just say, yeah, that sounds good. Or yeah, I made a mistake. Or yeah, I wish I would have done that better, or whatever. You know, you could just stand up to it.
Yeah, that didn't go to plan. And you know, the one piece that, you know, I share this with Scarlett all of the time. You have survived 100% of the shots life's thrown at you. That's one hell of a batting average. So believe in yourself, because the evidence says that you'll get through this too.
Right. What a beautiful thing. What a beautiful thing. I knew that you were going to be fun. I knew that you were going to make me laugh, which you did. I knew that the people who listen to this are going to laugh, because you just have that incredible way of bringing forth information to have people hear it in a way that doesn't test your confidence. You're not like, no. You're just like, oh, that might work. I mean, the way that you say it allows people to think that way. So Kim, if there's something I haven't asked you, a question I haven't asked you that you like to answer, or if you have something that you really want to share that we haven't shared, what would that be?
I guess if I could be really self-indulgent, I have a quote that I wrote for my little girl, but I share it all the time. And I share it because I believe it to be true of everybody. And yet not everyone's been given the gift of hearing it. And so if I could, I would invite the listeners to take heed of the following, which is to be curious, to dream big, to be kind, and take action, because you are proof that miracles happen.
I love that. I love the word miracle. I think I used to not believe in that word, Kim. And then one of the things I did is I set about every single day I'd write down a miracle. So a miracle I had experienced, or a miracle that somebody that I knew had experienced. And then I found myself saying things, oh my gosh, that was a miracle. Like I just, the other day I was driving from Los Angeles to Bakersfield, California, and there's all kind, traffic and whatever. And all of a sudden, there's this massive piece of metal in the road.
Wow.
Right? And I'm going like 70 miles an hour, and I just saw it fast enough that I could avoid it. And I thought, that's a miracle. That could have turned out really badly, right? I mean, the lane next to me was clear for whatever reason. And it wasn't something you could see because, there was cars and stuff in front of me. And I really didn't see people like dodging off of it either. It was just bam. I thought that's a miracle. But when you live your life looking for them, you're going to find them. Isn't that true?
It's so true. Yeah, and I drum that into my little girl all the time. I said, what we look for, we find. So if we want to look for people getting things wrong, we will find it. I've got a friend, pity loves a party. I don't want to join your pity parties. You track on over there. I'm going to be over here. I'm going to look for the positive, because there is always a positive. And if life's taught me anything, and I often do joke, if I were to write my memoirs, it would be 3 divorces, a stalker, an evil inner critic. And I have thrown in, for good measure, 2 car accidents, 3 life-threatening illnesses, and a miscarriage. So there's been plenty of opportunity to see things as a negative. I said, but actually, I also look at all the blessings, all the amazing things. And in every one of those experiences, I learned something. So everything in life is a lesson, a blessing, or both. And so I invite myself and anybody else that when you're not feeling blessed, look for the lesson, because the blessing is wrapped up right inside.
I love that. That's so wonderful. So Kim, why don't you tell people how they can find you? Tell them a little bit about your books, or what you do, so they know. Like after you listen to, look, we do almost the same thing. I don't do any of the like numbers and that. I'm not a fractional CRO or COO, but I want people to know, like, you exist, you're out there, you're wonderful in what you do. I would hire you in a second if I had a business, and so let people know what you do and how they can reach you.
Oh, bless you, my love. So you can get me pretty much anywhere on social media as Kim-Adelle Randall or Kim-Adelle 10. My podcast and my business platform is AuthenticAchievements.com. And my books, of which I've got 2 currently with publishers, one of which is called The Curious Leader. And that should be out later on this year. And the second one is a real personal one. So I wrote a book for my little girl. And I wrote it in May of this year as we were facing the first anniversary of my dad's death. I wrote it to help her to deal with grief and trauma, and it was only ever meant to be for her. And then her counsellor told me that it needed to go to a publisher, and so I sent it, and I got 3 publishing contracts, and we ended up signing with one, and it launches on the 5th of December. And the reason I'm most proud of that is it's a story about my little girl. And she's the bravest little soul and has had to go through so much in her life already. The fact that she can turn her story into something that can help other children facing similar and know that there is a way through, it is a miracle I can't stop thanking God that we are part of. So watch this space for that as well.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. So folks, look, I know after this particular podcast, you're going to want to subscribe. You're going to come back. We're going to listen for more people. I cannot promise you that everybody's going to be like Kim. I cannot promise you that, but I guarantee you there's going to be other people as well. So everybody have a winning day. We'll see you next time. Take care now. Bye.